Jack Hughes didn't hit the ground running in his first NHL season like many other first overall picks have. Players like Auston Matthews and Connor McDavid have set expectations incredibly high for players drafted with the first pick, so much so that players that aren't immediate NHL stars are seen as busts. It's easy to forget then that top picks such as Nathan MacKinnon and Joe Thornton took some time in their development before they blossomed into NHL superstars. It seems Jack Hughes is following that same pattern, as he was not incredible through his first two seasons, but looked absolutely electric for the Devils this past year. Today we take a look at the short career thus far of Jack Hughes, a player who looks likely to solidify his spot in the NHL next season as a superstar forward. Even with expectations lower than those of players like Connor McDavid, Jack Hughes' rookie season was pretty disappointing. During his 61 debut games for the Devils, Hughes would record 7 goals and 21 points for a production rate of 0.34 points per game. There were many positives to take from his debut season, though. Hughes would show flashes of dynamic skill, along with his incredible speed. Additionally, his shooting percentage was incredibly low, finishing the year with a 5.7%, well below league average. And he was only 18 years old. Given the bad luck and flashes of brilliance from Hughes, he was bound to improve next year. And improve he did. While he wouldn't explode into superstar numbers, Hughes' production rate drastically improved. He would score 11 goals and add 20 assists for 31 points in 56 games. This was good for a 0.55 points per game average, up 0.21 from last season. Hughes looked improved in all aspects of his game, getting faster, stronger, and better. He also played much more, as his average time on ice would go up around 3 minutes a game from the season prior to a 19.04 average. Again though, there was talk that Hughes was a bust. Still only 19 and averaging half a point per game, Hughes was rapidly improving on a Devils team that looked poised to push for a playoff spot. And so Jack Hughes would enter his third season, this season, 2021-2022. In his first game of the season, Hughes showed that he was going to be a problem for opposing teams. He would score twice, including the overtime winner to lead the Devils over the Blackhawks 4-3. In his next game, Hughes would record an assist early, but would then leave the game early with an apparent injury. It would turn out Hughes had dislocated his shoulder, a devastating injury to a Devils team looking to push for the playoffs. He was expected to miss significant time, and the Devils would have a tough time adapting to the loss of their star young forward. But some interesting news would break as Hughes was set to return from his injury. Having faith that Hughes is the star player they saw in Game 1, the Devils would extend Hughes to an 8-year, $64 million contract. This was a notable risk to take, as Hughes had yet to prove in his production that he was much more than a second-line center. But it absolutely paid off. Hughes would explode, putting up above a point-per-game numbers before suffering another injury. While the injury was relatively minor, the Devils, being out of a playoff spot at this point, decided to hold Hughes out for the season so as to not risk another injury. So, Hughes finished the year with 49 games played, 26 goals, and 56 points total. This was good for 1.14 points per game, placing him 25th in the NHL and equates to 93 points over a full 82-game season. Now, a few things to give context to how impressive these numbers are. First, Hughes is still only 20. Believe it or not, that is younger than Calder candidate Trevor Zegras. Having played at 18 years old in his debut season, Hughes is still younger than many rookies despite playing in 3 NHL seasons. Next is how good those numbers look in comparison to other NHL stars in their third seasons. Now, in fairness, scoring was up drastically this season. More players average around or over a point per game than in most past years. But even still, Hughes' 1.14 points per game average in his third year is incredibly impressive. This is more than Patrick Kane's third-year point production rate of 1.07, Auston Matthews' third-year 1.07, and Leon Draisaitl's third-year 0.94. While all of these players had more games played in their respective years, it's still wild that a player that was called a bust by many only 1 year ago can be so closely compared to these superstars. And we haven't even begun to talk about Hughes' goal-scoring improvements. Hughes has always been viewed as a playmaker, and the low shooting percentages throughout his first 2 seasons look to be something that would remain constant over much of his career. Seemingly out of nowhere, though, Hughes went from having a pretty lackluster shot to a very dangerous one. Hughes would finish the year with 26 goals and a 0.53 goals per game average. This averages out over an 82-game season to be 43 goals in a season. Again, these numbers can be closely compared to many NHL stars. This is more than Patrick Kane's third-year 0.37 goals per game average and only slightly behind Auston Matthews' third-year 0.54. Should Hughes continue to improve his shot, he could become among the very best offensive threats in the NHL. Hughes didn't play in as many games in his third year as the star players he's being compared to. It's unfair to say he'll be better than, or even equal to, superstars like Patrick Kane and Auston Matthews. Still, it's incredibly encouraging that we can be having these conversations. Jack Hughes looks poised to break out to a near 100-point season next year, provided he doesn't struggle with injuries. After a few years of struggling, the New Jersey Devils appear to have an absolute superstar on their hands. Jack Hughes will be the future and the face of the New Jersey Devils, a young superstar that can hopefully lead them to the playoffs as soon as next season.